What's up, everybody? You're listening to Lo-Fi Faith with Mike and James.
We're two guys who also happen to be pastors, doing our best to have open conversations about what it means to follow Jesus in today's world.
Welcome back, everybody, to Lo-Fi Faith with Mike and James. This is James, and that's Mike. Hi, Mike.
Well, this is Mike.
Yeah.
Not that.
Well,
I'm not a that. I'm a this.
Did I depersonalize you?
You did.
Are you okay with that?
Yes.
That's good. So that Mike over there.
That over there.
What has that Mike been up to lately?
Well, great question, James.
Thank you, Mike.
Yes, I've been, getting started with my new career, which I think we announced on the show a few episodes ago. Didn't actually say what it was. So as it turns out, I know everyone's so interested in this.
Yes.
Like everyone has been on the edge of their seats.
I know
going,
they have not.
What is happening in Mike's life? And I'm going to now quench your curiosity. Don't know if is that an expression? If it wasn't, it is now.
Yeah.
It's real estate. I'm going into real estate. And today, James, I actually had a real estate training session with a guy who is very experienced in the industry and now conducts trainings all throughout New Zealand. So it was out at a golf club at a nice venue, and there with a bunch of other agents and salespersons, and enjoyed a good day out there.
So you're getting into real estate.
Yeah.
Against my suggestion, which was to get into fake estate, if I recall.
Okay.
I still think that's just a really wide open market right now.
Yeah, you think that's more of a unexplored territory.
Yeah, there's the lot.
There's more opportunities there, you could say.
A lot that could be done there.
The market's less saturated.
Yeah, because the thing about it is if you sell
fake houses,
estates that don't exist, you have unlimited inventory.
Yeah. Interesting, James.
Yeah. So anyway, if you would like to go to another training at a disc golf course, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, are you going to facilitate that training?
Yeah.
Okay.
Easy. I'm actually really into fake estate.
From your experience in fake estate, are there any risks involved?
No, it's
not really.
It's fake.
Yeah.
So what risk could there be?
Right, because there's not even a regulatory body.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
There is nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, there is certainly the opportunity for prison time.
Okay. I mean, it's not a big deal, really.
Par for the course.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
That's because golf and.
Yeah.
Can you explain it more though?
No.
Okay.
No, that's as far as I can go. But anyway, welcome to real estate.
You're welcoming me, are you?
I'm welcoming you
as someone who's not in the industry.
As someone who is far from the industry in every way, I want to welcome you to your new industry.
Well, thank you, James. That welcome means a lot, especially coming from you.
Yeah. As someone with years of experience away from real estate, I want to welcome you to your new industry.
I want to formally and officially welcome you to the industry.
And I hope it goes well. Follow Lo-Fi Faith with Mike and James on Instagram to keep up with new episodes, behind-the-scenes content, and to join in on the conversation. Well, we wanted to follow up on the conversation we started last time, which was on the idea of trauma and abuse within the church. So we had a pretty heavy talk last time about how this is more prevalent than we want to admit, and there are some real issues that happen in the church. And this time, we kind of want to talk about what we could do about it. How can we make our communities more of a safe place, more of a place that actually not only doesn't tolerate abuse, but can help facilitate the healing for those who have experienced it? So I have some ideas and I have some things that I've studied in the past, but I'd love to start with just picking your brain, Mike. When you think of a community that actually is healthy, that actually is not a place where abuse is going to be able to flourish, what would that look like for you?
Gosh, that's a broad question. I guess awareness is a huge thing. Being aware of, the kinds of things that can happen in church and how what abuse looks like and the kind of effects of trauma and what that looks like in people. I think that's important because I do think there are a lot of people that are unaware. I mean, I would consider myself still quite unaware of a lot of these things. It's not something I've studied. Trauma and abuse is something that I have become more aware of as I've gotten older and as I've had certain experiences. But as we talked about, there are different kinds of trauma, there are different kinds of abuse. They have different impacts on people. So I think awareness is a huge thing. If a church can be educated as a community on trauma and abuse in a church context, in a religious context, that can at least start the ball rolling. And it can help them to understand what what things might we even currently be doing that are contributing to this? What ways might we be interacting with traumatized individuals that is not helping them, that may be pushing them out the door? And then, okay, how can we actually start to change the systems and the processes and the behaviors and the things that we're doing so that we become a welcoming place to people who are already traumatized or have had bad experiences in a church? And also, how can we prevent, contributing to those things in the future? So I think awareness is a huge thing. And again, even as someone like myself who has, I've been a pastor, I've been heavily involved in churches for quite a few years of my life, I still would say there's a lot of education that I'm missing on that topic. So I think it's a big thing, is just to make people aware.
Would you say that you have witnessed some forms of religious abuse?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And what did that look like?
I think the worst, that I've seen is basically when somebody in a position of spiritual leadership uses that position to their advantage to gain a level of control over the church's minds, or many of the people in the church's minds, so that they can then influence them, get them to agree with them, get them to comply with their wishes, and keep themselves in that position of power. And I've seen several examples of that. And it always requires people kind of almost gaslighting themselves, like they kind of know that this is not the right thing, but the influence and the power of the personality of that person just kind of forces them into that mold, and they end up sacrificing a lot of their own individuality. It comes at a heavy cost, and I've seen a lot of people hurt just by sitting under and being involved with people who use their spiritual authority to their own advantage.
Yeah. I think that there is in church, there is definitely in a lot of churches, somebody who is tempted to be controlling finds ways into positions of authority. And when they do that, it's almost like they don't have that much authority necessarily outside of church. So because of it, this is the one place where they have a little bit of power, and then they misuse it. Or you could say sometimes it's people who have that same dynamic within their family, and then they bring it into the church. And because the church is not really aware of these dynamics, I think most churches are not well trained in group dynamics or healthy boundaries or conflict management.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
so because of that, we're basically just repeating the patterns that we have in our own lives.
Yeah.
And we let controlling people control.
Like the example that I have in mind was someone who had a very forceful personality and was also, fairly intelligent and had, on one level, a number of gifts and abilities, but then used that in ways to keep themselves in a position of authority and basically to for lack of a better term, to rule with an iron fist, right? And I would imagine that people who end up trying to control others in the church are very much dealing with the same dynamics outside of a church context. Like if you just need control as a person, it's not going to be limited to one sphere of your life, most likely, right?
Yeah.
What we're seeing is just the manifestation and expression of someone's personal issues coming out in a church context, in a religious context.
Yeah, these people we would consider radioactive, and yet somehow we allow them to be voted into positions of power within our church. Why do you think that even happens, by the way? What is it about us? Why don't we just say, hey, we need to run away from that type of dynamic?
Well, I think on one hand, it's intimidation. Like a lot of people don't like dealing with conflict. Conflict is something that I've had to learn to embrace more as I've gotten older, but I can see lots of patterns of conflict avoidance in myself in the past, right? And the more conflict avoidant you are, when somebody comes along and they have very strong opinions and they're like, we must do this, you know inherently that to counter them is going to lead to conflict. And if you don't want to deal with that, it's much easier to kind of just go along with that forceful personality. So one thing could be conflict avoidance. Another thing could be maybe particularly in a religious context. Sometimes we have some interesting ideas about conflict, and we think we should always be kind of just nice and submissive, and we don't want to rock the boat, because Jesus was nice and Jesus was this, and we have these ideas about what following Jesus looks like and what operating in a group dynamic looks like. which is maybe a little bit unbalanced. So again, we feel uncomfortable, going head on with someone and disagreeing with them and saying, hey, I don't think that's appropriate. And I don't think we do need to go that way. I think we need to have a wider discussion here. So again, we kind of submit. And
which, by the way, Jesus was not always nice.
Yeah, exactly.
He was always kind.
Yeah.
But he wasn't always nice.
Yeah, he didn't just lay down and let people walk over him.
He was not afraid of conflict at all.
Yeah. He was often in conflict in a lot of his ministry.
Yeah, and he didn't run away from it. So, yeah, I think actually the way that we approach church and modern Christianity is this idea that we have to be nice people, and nice people are conflict avoidant. And that's just simply not the case.
Yeah.
But because of that, I've seen this so many times, even in churches where the dynamics are really unhealthy, it's a really toxic church. Usually it's just 10 to 15% of the church, if that. It's just they're the loudest and the most forceful.
Yeah.
And because of that, we don't really know what to do. So a lot of people just sort of stay silent and avoid it. So kind of to circle back around, part of the issue that we have maybe within our churches and why spiritual abuse can take place so often is because we avoid conflict, because we don't deal with issues head on and early on. So we can see some red flags, we can see some issues, but because we're afraid of making people unhappy with us or afraid of their reaction, we just stop talking about it altogether and just sort of let things take place, even though we know they're wrong.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's kind of like the short-term cost is a lot easier because you don't have to deal with that person that you don't want to deal with. The long-term cost is much greater because if you allow someone like that in a position of power, I think we've both probably seen it, they can do a lot of damage over quite a long period of time.
Yeah.
Because again, once somebody gets into power, it can be a lot more difficult to remove them from that.
Yeah.
So short-term gain, perhaps, long-term loss.
Yeah, and
long-term pain.
That's the case a lot of times when we do conflict avoidance, right? There's an issue, but because in the short run, lack of conflict feels better.
Yep.
We allow it to grow, and the longer it grows, the more difficult it is to actually deal with.
The more easier it is to justify the same inaction.
100%.
Yeah.
So because of that, we let bad behavior go on longer. And somebody who is truly abusive is going to test boundaries. They're going to continue to test boundaries to see what they can get away with, what people will put up with or will not put up with. And based on that, they'll know whether or not this is a quote-unquote safe place for them to take advantage of other people.
It's like a child testing their parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
How much can I get away with here?
So having healthy boundaries also plays, I think, a really important role. So what does this look like? Like how would you counsel a church to be the type of place that's not only aware that trauma happens, but also is the type of group that says, no, that's not the type of place we're going to be? What would that look like for you?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I wouldn't do that because I don't think I have the knowledge to do that. But I would seek out people who do. Yeah, I think that's the thing that I would do. Would be to find the right resources, and maybe it's someone who's gone through that education and who's part of some ministry that helps churches in that area. But I would try to get locked in with the right resources, the right people who can come in and give me that knowledge, and that I guess that might involve. Just for one thing, presentations on just, educational things on how to be a church that is aware and knowledgeable about those things. And then the more difficult part of it, of course, is changing behaviors, is changing patterns. Because once things are reinforced and once you've been operating a certain way for a long time, and most churches, any organization falls into a certain way of doing things, there's a certain culture that becomes established. Changing that, if it needs to be changed. Now, that is the challenge, James, as you and I know, changing a church culture. I think there's studies, that have been done on that give an average of 7 years of hard labor.
Any organization, if you really want to change the culture, it's going to take at least 4 to 7 years of intentionality.
Yeah.
What happens typically is there's the first part, which is the awareness, right? We give the information about a new type of culture. Then if we progress from that, we often get to this idea of coming up with some plans. All right, so this is the plan for how we're going to change this culture. Many people are cool with those first two steps. The third step is the ongoing implementation.
Yeah, the first two are theoretical.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And then you realize, this is actually going to require something of me that is not comfortable and not convenient.
Yeah.
And then if you can get through the implementation, then you have to keep evaluating, right?
Yeah.
So how are we, where are we going? What's that look like? And then you go back to implementation again.
Because it's so easy once you let your foot off the accelerator for everything just to return to the way that it was, right? It has to be constant.
Well, we're the same thing, right? That's why gym memberships start in January, and then by mid-February, everyone stopped coming again.
Yeah, it's just building a habit.
You had that idea. The idea was to be fit. So you had the plan, and then you started the implementation. And at some point, pretty early on, usually, we realize how difficult that implementation piece is going to be, how much it's going to require of us. So we go back to our normal. And that's the difference between real change and a nice idea. Most people are not really willing to put in that work. So when we come back to changing the culture of a church, you're talking about 4 to 7 years of intentionality.
And that's in a group dynamic as well. It's not just a single person building a habit over maybe 30 days or 60 days, right? Which is tough but achievable. But you're dealing with a whole diverse group of people with different ideas and different age groups and coming from different backgrounds. Yeah. That is a challenge, man. That is a real challenge.
Well, add to it the average pastor's only in the church for 3 to 5 years, right? And oftentimes, many of the leaders will rotate in and out. So when you're working on changing a culture, you're also changing out leaders at the same time. There's not that consistency. So it takes a lot of work. And then you go to like a systemic organizational change, and it's a massive ship to try to turn. However, there are things that we can do that would help us as local churches or as individuals to understand and to be part of preventing abuse in the church. So I think that that's really important. One thing that I came across, I used to study this a little bit, was the idea of being a trauma-informed organization, but then specifically a trauma-informed church. And so there's 4 R's.
4 R's.
4 R's. I knew this was going to happen. 4 R's.
4 R's, James.
R's.
A-H is how you spell it.
Is it?
4 R.
That's how you spell what?
R.
That's how you spell what?
That's how we spell R.
What is R? Yeah, I spell R the same way.
Is a letter in the alphabet.
No, that would be R.
No, that would not be R.
It would be R. That's where it is.
Okay, we need to move on.
Yeah, well, we're going to agree to disagree on that one.
We're going to fight over this off here.
Yeah, so the 4 R's of a trauma-informed church.
Well, now you sound British. The 4 R's.
The first one is a church realizes the widespread impact of trauma on those the church is ministering to and alongside of. In other words, like you said, this is the awareness piece. We start paying attention. The reality is we are in a very broken, very mixed up, messed up, traumatized world. And that means the people outside the church that we're ministering to and the people inside the church that we're ministering to are carrying a lot of wounds. And trauma is just another word for wound, right? So wounded people. We're aware of the woundedness around us. So that's necessary because if you don't have that awareness, you're not going to do anything about it.
And a lot of people would say, but we are because, the Bible says we're all sinners and we've all fallen short, and we understand that, James, that we're all broken people, right? Some people would push back and say, of course we know that. But obviously you're talking about something far more specific here.
Well, the second R says that we recognize the signs and symptoms of trauma.
Okay.
Right? As well as the effect that living with a traumatized person has on all relationships. So the idea that not only are you aware that trauma is a thing, that wounding happens, that we're broken people, but now we can see the signs and symptoms. When somebody acts in a certain way, we don't see it as just
you're a bad person.
Yeah, a disagreeable trait, a bad person. We see it for what it is. This is somebody's woundedness coming out, right? We recognize that. We also recognize that when someone is wounded in that way, it impacts the way that they interact with others in really, really harmful ways.
Sure.
Right. So, but what this does, I may have brought this up in a different episode, right? There's a difference between saying what's wrong with you and what's happened to you. So we're not talking about what's wrong with people. We're trying to understand what might have happened to somebody that they thought that this was the appropriate way to approach conflict or people or whatever else.
Yeah. So it's taking a curious stance. It's why? Why is this the case?
Yeah. But also recognizing that they may not see that, and we may not even be able to understand all of the why.
Sure.
But we know, okay, this is woundedness talking, so I'm not going to take it personally. And at the same time, I'm going to have healthy boundaries because your woundedness is not an excuse
100%.
to mistreat other people, right? Like I can understand why you are the way you are and still not accept how you are acting in a way that is harmful.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
like there's a lot that I don't accept about you.
Yeah. But here I am.
Yeah, but here you are.
Because
well, that's just...
I don't respect your boundaries.
Exactly.
That's my... Yeah.
So we've probably got some work to do here.
I doubt it. Let's move on.
Okay.
All right, so the third R, so we realize the impact of trauma. We realize what happens when trauma happens. Second, we recognize what it looks like when people are traumatized. The third one is we respond to the needs of the congregation and the community. So we take this knowledge and then we apply it in the way that we plan our ministries, the way that we develop policy, which people don't like the word policy, but policy is really just saying we've got a plan for this.
Yeah.
This is the plan for how this happens. This is the plan for how this happens, right? And then also how we use our resources. Are we spending our money in a way that actually is working towards healing traumatized people? Are we focusing our time and our energy and our efforts in meeting people's woundedness and helping them to heal from that? Imagine a church that really focused on that, right? Like, is our money and our time and our energy really going towards healing brokenness, healing woundedness, acknowledging the wounds, and then trying to help people get better if they want to? And then if they don't want to, great, we love you, but like, there's going to be some boundaries here if you don't want to get better.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? I mean, you don't have to answer in a specific way, but in a broad way, in your experience in different churches, how much of our resources are going towards actually helping people's woundedness get healed?
Well, I think it would depend on who you ask, because some people would say
No,
yes.
I'm asking you.
Well, in my opinion, very, very little, and the reason I say that is because, I guess I have a different perspective, but a lot of people would say, well, we're handing out books and literature that are, on the Bible and on, various elements of Christianity, and we're running programs on this and that. But I just don't see evidence that a lot of those efforts are actually meaningfully healing people on a deep level, or
Right.
contributing in that way. Like
I don't think we're very
it may be
intentional.
achieving other things, but when you're familiar with the kinds of things that go on in church, it's very obvious there is still a whole lot of trauma here. There's a whole lot of woundedness here, and we're just playing it all out in a different location.
Because we can make people theologically accurate in our perspective of that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they're actually healthy, healing people, right?
Yeah.
We're not necessarily creating radiant individuals.
And that point really needs to be stressed. It really needs to be emphasized. I think we just spend a lot of time arguing over and trying to refine these points of theology that we find to be very important. But at the end of the day, if it's not making you a happier, healthier, more whole person, then how much value should we really be placing on those things? I'm not saying there's no value, but perhaps we're overvaluing that. If the reality is we're still playing out these patterns of toxicity in our own churches, which are supposed to be places that are helping people get to a healthier place. You're listening to Lo-Fi Faith with Mike and James.
Yeah. So when you put that all together, right, you realize it, you recognize it, you're responding to it. The fourth one, I think, is the most intentional step, which is resisting re-traumatizing people. So we're going to recognize wounded people are going to come through our doors, right? And some of us, honestly, we can grow up in the church. That doesn't mean we're not wounded, right? We have our own dysfunctions, our own stuff, right? So we're wounded, broken people. We have trauma in our lives. Not everybody, but most of us are carrying some of that. So we're going to be the type of place and create the type of space where, as much as is within our power, we are not going to let more trauma happen to people. We're not going to trigger people intentionally.
Yep.
And we're going to do our best to not be unintentionally triggering people, right? Because we're going to start being aware of how to actually talk about people. For example, like we talked about in the last show, was the fact that sometimes we talk about groups of people as if they are groups of people and not individuals, like they're dehumanized.
Sure.
We talk about those people. And because of that, somebody who is connected to those people, or somebody who is one of those people sitting there with us, can be deeply re-traumatized, right? Also, when we use forceful language of control, language of power, oftentimes the way that we talk about God, if we're not careful about it, can be re-traumatizing to somebody who has had a really, really difficult experience with their parent or with someone else in their life. So, like, being more aware of the words we use, of the spaces we create, of making sure that there are healthy boundaries so that people feel physically and emotionally safe when they're with us, I think is massive.
Gosh, I mean, as I'm listening to all this, the pessimistic side of me is coming out.
Yeah.
And I go, what are the chances that a whole church can move from a certain way of being that maybe was quite toxic and traumatizing and re-traumatizing to this kind of almost fantasy that you were describing, where suddenly we're far more aware of ourselves, of our patterns, of the very words that we're saying that we now recognize could be re-traumatizing. I mean, can you, from your experience, James, maybe, working in these circles, can you maybe share a highlight? Can you share a positive thing? Maybe a positive change that you've seen in a church, in an individual, I don't know, that has shifted them more towards a healthier place?
Yeah, so I can tell you about a church that I think was really intentional in doing this.
Okay.
This is a church in Georgia in the United States. And I used to work as a caseworker, and I worked with biological families of children who are in foster care. So the kids had been removed from their families for some reason, and then I was working with their families to try to reunify if possible.
Right.
And one of the things that I did was supervised visitation. So I would pick up the children, I would bring them to their bio families, and then I would spend time with them, kind of just being there in case there was any need, seeing how the visits were going, seeing if they were, being safe, whatever. One of the places we did this was at a church, but they had been a church that totally repurposed themselves.
Okay.
And so the entire building was used for helping other people. So they had recovery programs, like substance abuse recovery programs. They had financial workshops and so on. They had the supervised visitation hosting. They had everything that you could think of. But what I found really, really interesting as a result of this, I mean, it was just integrated into everything they did. They're like, well, we're going to be a space where people can heal. And the people who were like the church members were people who were former broken individuals who had gone through some of these programs and found enough kindness and love and empathy and compassion that they actually started being active members of the church and then helping others to do the same thing. And that gave me so much hope. Now, I can't tell you what it was like before. So I can't say, they went from this to this. But I can tell you that there are places where this is really intentional and this is how people operate.
Well, James, thanks for sharing. And I've enjoyed the discussion.
You're welcome, Mike. Thank you for sharing as well.
You don't mention it. But hey, we hope these 2 episodes have been really helpful. And again, we're just starting the discussion, so we would encourage you guys to look more into this yourself. James, are there any resources that people should get tapped into on this topic that you can recommend?
I would say, thanks for putting me on the spot. That was real rubbish of you.
You're a quick thinker. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Do you want me to distract them for like 10 seconds?
No.
Okay.
I would rather you didn't.
I was going to sing or do a southern accent.
I think that would actually, people would stop listening at that
point.
We've
beaten that horse to death.
So there are a lot of resources out there. I think if you're really interested, looking up trauma-informed churches, there's a lot of good resources out there that will help you to understand what that could look like. And there is, I'll give a shout out. So there's the International Center for Trauma Education and Care, which is really just rolls off the tongue. That's based at Andrews University, and that is the group that I did my internship with and did a lot of study on trauma-informed organizations, and specifically trauma-informed churches. If you want to understand trauma more and how we can do something about it as a group, as a school, as a church, whatever, they're a great resource, and they have access to so many other resources. So shout out to the International Center for Trauma Education and Care.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Appreciate you guys listening. We'll catch you next time on Lo-Fi Faith.
Thanks for hanging out with us on Lo-Fi Faith. If something resonated with you today, we'd love it if you shared the show with a friend.
You can catch up on past episodes at plains.org.nz and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.
We'll be back with a fresh episode in 2 weeks.
See you then.